Kerry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you turn on the video by clicking those two, that little circle with the equal signs in it? The circle at the bottom left-hand corner with the equal signs in it. You should be able to click that and it'll say turn on video.
All right. It says I'm muted. So I'm not muted, but I don't see any option to turn on video.
You should see it now. All right. That music is terrible.
And it's loud.
I know, I can't. Sometimes it's good music, but today it's like, okay, I don't know.
It's like, what y'all doing?
I guess I'll wait until 7 to get started. I mean, thanks for coming, Woody. I think it was like 2 hours. No,
I cannot hear you above WaitBot. WaitBot is too loud.
Let me get rid of it.
WaitBot needs to settle himself.
I know. I was saying maybe I should wait until 7 to start, but I mean it's 6:54. We could get started. Woody's already here. Thanks for joining, Woody.
Hi, Woody.
So I think there were like 2 RSVPs or whatever, so we're fine. We're good to get started. This records and then you can send it out to people, so it's awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So Kerry-Ann, welcome to Fireside, right? This is Oh Hell No podcast is on Fireside now. So this is like my second time broadcasting, and I'm so happy that you could be here with me.
Thanks for having me.
So Kerry-Ann Reid Brown is a host and producer of a podcast called Carry-On Friends Podcast. It's a Caribbean American podcast that really bridges the Caribbean and the American experience on so many different levels, or she just brings light to so much information about the Caribbean for people who have left the Caribbean and now live here but have roots, to the Caribbean. So it's just an awesome podcast, and that's how I met Kerry. Mm-hmm. She's also the founder of Breadfruit Media, where she produces other podcasts, and she also assists podcasters with different, different things that they need in their own daily journey of podcasting. So it's a full service, company that she created. She's also the founder of the Caribbean Podcast Directory, right? And that directory is it has all the information that you need about finding a Caribbean podcast. Either the person who's doing the podcast is born here but has Caribbean roots, or they are Caribbean and now they live here, or they're Caribbean and live in the Caribbean.
Yes.
So I love that directory. I was so happy when she came up with that idea. So Kerry-Ann is an innovator. She is filling the gaps for Caribbean Americans, and she is doing it on her own terms. So glad to have you here. Welcome, girl.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you so much for always just supporting and pushing me or challenging me. When I first met you, you were like, I don't think blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, well, blah. But, other people might look at that like, I don't want to talk to her. But I think you challenge me to always think of other perspectives, and you give your opinions. And, I'm never, when I'm going to talk to you, I'm never going to be comfortable knowing that this is one way. Keisha's going to always have something to say. Even if
Yeah.
somebody's on the podcast, she's like, girl, that person was crazy. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah, I'm always keeping it all the way real, okay?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
tonight we wanted to talk about why passion is required for podcasting, because I've been podcasting for 5 years now, and Kerry has been podcasting for just as long, if not longer. And we've seen a lot of people come, we've seen a lot of people go, and we've also had our own personal struggle as podcasters and creators, just really trying to get our messages out there. And we just wanted to have a conversation about, platforms like Fireside and Clubhouse and all these platforms that are being created that are supposed to kind of help, creators really get out there. But I still feel like somehow we're getting lost and buried under the celebs who have created their audiences long ago with other things that they have worked on. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is, why did you start the Caribbean Podcast Directory, and what can you share with us about your experience with creators?
Um, so I created the Caribbean Podcast Directory out of it's happenstance. I was pregnant the like most of 2017, and I was planning content for like, okay, I'm about to have this baby. I need to plan some content. And so one of the content that I planned was, okay, let's do a listicle, because, and, as a side, this is not talked about a lot. And I remember recording the podcast. As women in podcasting, how do you manage like having babies, podcasting? It's like work, right? Do we, go on maternity leave from the podcast while we do this thing over here? So I was planning my content, and the listicle was a content that I had planned, like 10 podcasts by Caribbean Americans that you should know. And that was something that was created February 2018. So like 4 years ago, right? This article was created and of course scheduled a social media post, and it got a lot of interaction, more than I thought it would, because in my mind, it's a filler content because I'm just trying to create content to get people busy or not have people think I disappeared because I'm off having this baby. And that's how I met you, because you're like, I'm Caribbean too. I was just like,
Right. I'm like, why am I not on this list?
right? And so that list creates a lot of traffic for my blog. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm onto something here. You were like, well, I'm not on this list. Somebody was tagging somebody other person. This person was on this list. And I'm like, wait a minute. There's something that's happening here. So I just made a note of all the additional names. So this was February 2018. I launched Breadfruit Media June of 2018. And I decided to create like a page on the old Breadfruit Media site and create a longer list of podcasters, mostly adding on to that initial 10 and those who I discovered along the way. By the end of that year, I went to Podcast Movement and people wanted search functionalities. I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. And I got like some feedback to say, you know what, this needs its own website. And so that's how I ended up creating a separate website for the Caribbean Podcast Directory. And it just started growing from there. I think 2018 represented, there were tons of articles created by Nielsen, Black Girl Magic, Black creators, podcasting by Black creators. So that represented a wave where a lot of new content creators, and that Nielsen report specifically identified Caribbeans as part of this new wave of Black content creators coming into the podcast space. And so that's really where I was like, I remember when I started podcasting, actually today I was looking over some notes. I started doing my research from the summer of 2014. This is where I got into this space where, okay, I need to actually do it and not just be passive about it. So for almost a year before I launched, I was creating content and didn't quite find a lot of me's or wanting people like me trying to create content. And I was like, it might seem to other people like, yeah, there are a bunch of Caribbean content creators, but to others, they may not see those people who we see on social media. You and I know the algorithm chooses. So not because I know you exist, somebody else knows you exist. And so creating a central way for other people to find shows and based on heritage or whatever, maybe you're in the mood for a Trini accent, or maybe you're in the mood for some other accent. That's why I created the directory.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, my alarm is going off.
You're okay. That's the thing about being live, right? They see everything, but it's all good. But yeah, that's I love that. I love that you created that because I was able to find so many other podcasts that were being created by Caribbean people that I never knew existed. So I think it was an awesome idea. And I love that, you did that. Because even if those podcasts are on Apple or on these other places, like you can't really find them. There's no genre or anything that says like Caribbean, or anything like that. So, and then they're buried under all of the, Joe Rogans and, all of these other podcasts that are just topping the charts right now. So you're not going to find it. So because you created that space, you've spoken to a lot of creators, you've seen a lot of podcasts come and go. What do you think is the biggest misconception with podcast creators?
The biggest misconception is, I think, ease. And ease comes into multiple categories, right? It's easy to do because somebody's like, yeah, it's just easy. You just get it. You have a phone, you just do it. You do it from your phone, or you have a computer, you just do it from your computer. And they neglect to include the other things that go along with that, right? Ease of starting and recording and editing, right? That's the part that's always missing. But ease in terms of, oh, you can make money. Man, that is the thing that kills people a lot. They're disappointed because they expected to make money quicker, or they are disappointed because they expected to have a larger audience.
I had to clap for that, girl, because that's true. Yes, a lot of people think that, oh, I'm going to make money. I'm going to be an influencer. I'm going to be like a podcast maven, like, right? But
No,
that's not the real deal. Not
it's
unless,
not.
you're Charlemagne the God, or, somebody like those people, they get good deals, and who knows what they really get, right? Because we don't really know.
Yeah. And I think that's the number one thing, right? Podcasters are seeing the success of others. And those people, some of those people, not all of them, are saying like, yeah, it was really easy. But a lot of times you are seeing the results of their 5 years or their 4 years. And you
Right.
want that 5 year result in a few months. And that is not going to happen. And also, there's just so many outliers and variables that in the heat of creating content or this excitement to create content, you're not thinking about. And I'm very careful in how I say this. It's like, podcasting is a great opportunity if you are doing it for a very specific thing. Yes, everyone wants to make money, and yes, you want to grow your audience. But if you are focused on the goal as to why, and we have to get, for me, honestly, podcasting requires me to be very creative and think out the box, because what works for Keisha and everyone else is not going to work for me. And I constantly have to iterate. And I think that's where podcasters aren't told enough, that it's good to look at Kerry-Ann, it's good to look at Keisha and see what's worked for them, but it may not work for you. And you have to work really hard to figure out something that works for you. And it goes back to the misconception that I said before, this idea that it's easy. It ease in creating the content or ease in making money. It is not easy. And our favorite shows are able to hire VAs and other people to help them to create the show. I've been doing it for a number of years now, and it's taken me years to be able to do something. And then we think of the culture of entrepreneurship where everyone wants to quit their full-time job to be an
Oh, that
entrepreneur,
is driving me insane. It's just driving
right?
me
And
crazy.
but I look at it like my full-time job is a source of investment, right? I'm able to put discretionary money aside to help support and build and sow into this business or this venture for me to be able to do certain things. And I have to invest in it in order to get stuff out of it. So I think a lot of the conversations are a lot of what hook people into podcasting are the highlights, like, boom, you could do this, bang, bang, bang. And not enough of the real talk, of what it
Right.
really takes
The
to really,
time, the effort, the
yeah,
creativity, all of that stuff that goes into creating a podcast and putting something good out there, something that means something, something that has value to someone, even if it's one person, I feel like it should have some sort of value. It's
right.
not just nonsense. Like sometimes I do hear like people, they start podcasting and they're just talking and talking and talking. And then I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? Like, I don't even know what the point is, but people just,
Again, for that, I think everyone is modeling their favorite podcasters. So a lot of like hot topic shows or shows where they're friends, like yakking it up with each other, and they feel like, oh, it's, there's a lot of imitating, but no one's understanding the method behind why show A does it that way or show B does it that way. And I think that is where, people get caught up in whether their show is successful or not. So a lot of the symptoms that people complain about with podcasting is because we have people who are imitating what they see and what they think works and not necessarily saying, well, does this work for me? So like a perfect example, I knew from the beginning of time when I started my podcast, like, there's no way I'm doing a weekly show. You cannot pay me enough money to do a weekly show. There's no way. No way. And at one point, I'll be honest, at one point, I was like, all the shows that are being featured and say they have millions or thousands of downloads, I shouldn't say millions, within like the Black podcasting space, they have thousands of downloads. Those are weekly shows. So maybe if I switch to a weekly show, I'll get more downloads. And the other angel on my shoulder was like, girl, we ain't doing no weekly show. It's every 2 weeks. That's it. Because
right.
I know what my capabilities are. I remember when I first started listening to podcasts in 2011, I stopped listening to a lot of shows because life happened and I couldn't keep up with the new episodes every week. And then I just stopped listening because my perfectionist brain is like, if I can't listen to all the episodes I miss, I'm going to stop listening altogether, which is what happened. I don't want anyone to listen to my show. I know people have other things they want to do, so I'm going to give them enough so that they are able to consume my show and other shows at the same time and not necessarily feel pressure that they've missed so much. So no one's thinking or about, oh, Keisha does this. I like it, but how does this fit in my lifestyle? And how will this impact? How does this work for me? As opposed to, you love beauty stuff and eyelashes. I'm gonna like walk in here doing all this stuff. It's not me. It doesn't work for me, but it works for you. And I think people say it in podcasting, but I don't think people follow the advice. You have to do what works for you. You have to be true to you. And it might seem like you're going in the opposite direction of someone else, but it has to still feel true to you, because then it's going to come out in the way you deliver your content.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining, Wendy.
Hi,
Um,
Wendy.
so here's another thing too. Like when I started podcasting, I remember these two girls that were podcasts started at the same time as me, and they do like a financial podcast. And I always talk about them because their podcast took off. They're both Black women. Their podcast took off. One, even though their podcast took off, they were both doing different things at different times. One went right into like writing books. The other was doing like a feature on news. And then she had like features in magazines and papers and blah, blah, blah. And then she was able to quit her job. And now she has all these sponsors and she's doing this and she's doing that. And the other one is like, super busy and has deadlines and all this stuff. And here I am still like, well, damn, what the hell? Like, what happened?
But you just saw the tip of the iceberg, because I guarantee you those people who started podcasting, they were blogging for much longer. They had like built-in followers.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well, and also they're covering a different topic. Like finances is a big thing.
yeah,
My podcast is really just about inspiring people to chase their dreams and follow their desire to do something that they've always wanted to do, so that they can live a passionate and purpose-driven life, right? Sometimes it takes people a while to get to that place where they even want to think like that. You know what I mean?
mhm,
But finances, that's something that hits you in the face every day. So you're kind of like, damn, they're telling tips on finances. I need to listen to this, or I need to. So I get it. And that's why I say you have to really be passionate about what you're doing and stay in your lane. Because if I would have gotten distracted by that, I would have given up already,
yeah,
right? But I
yeah.
really am passionate about what I'm doing. I love sharing these stories that I share with people. I love the guests that I have that come on my show that talk about their journey, how they got from here to there. And I feel like there's value in that, even if it's just 100 people downloading my episodes or whatever. Like for me, there's value.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
you recently created a course for
Yes.
podcasts. Tell us what that course is about and what you expect them to get out of it, or what you want them to get out of it.
Yeah, so I it took years to get to this point of creating this. It's a free 30-minute mini course. And it was created with the intention that if you are considering a podcast and you're on the fence about whether you should start a podcast, it is literally me thinking, this is the conversation I have with people who walk up to me all the time, and is me trying to give you the honest facts as high level as possible about what's podcasting, what's involved, what's the real deal, what are some things. And it's really to get that perspective from me, who's been podcasting for over 7 years now. And one of the things that I discovered through the directory and in from podcasting generally is that there's so much information, and even though there's a lot of information that's available, people want information from somebody who's gone through it long enough, who's been helping others go through it. And it's just an easier way for me to say, okay, you asked me about podcasting. Here's a really quick 30-minute course. It's not even 30-minute. I rounded it up to 30 minutes. And you could just check it out. And then from there, you have more questions. We could figure that out. But it's really to help podcasters, give them what I don't hear enough of being told to podcasters. and be honest about what to expect, helping new or aspiring podcasters to manage their expectations.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really good because I think sometimes you have this idea and you're like, oh, I think I want to start a podcast. I think this is for me. I think I should do this because I have a voice and I need to get this message out there, right? But then when you start realizing all of the stuff that's involved, you're like, hold up. I don't have this much time and I'm really not that interested in doing all of the other stuff that goes into this. And what else do I need to be doing? So I think it's good to have a course that kind of takes you through and says like, hey, these are the things that you need to kind of check off
Yeah.
and to figure out if podcasting is really for you. What I noticed too is a lot of people that I've interviewed on that have come on my podcast, to talk about books they've written and things like that, is that 6 months later they started their own podcast, and I'm always like, that's so weird. Like I know that they're doing it to kind of, I guess, push whatever they're teaching or whatever they're talking about. But then I always wonder, like, well, what happens to their other promotion, like how they did when they came on and they were really focused about their message themselves and what they were really trying to tell us that they were helping people with, like what happens to that? But I guess you can still do that in conversations with other people. But I just feel like it's so much time that you invest in podcasting, unless, like you said, you design it to really fit your needs. Like on here on Fireside, I see some people, they'll have like a 20-minute, talk about something. Like Trinity, I see you. Thank you for coming
Hi,
in.
Trinity.
I join some of your stuff and I love it. Today he did like a segment talking about trust, like breaking trust or whatever. So I do love this fireside space where you can just jump on, do something, and then it's recorded, it's casted to all these other platforms, and you're done. So I think that with the creation of other things coming about, I think there's different ways that we can experience, people and their voices without just doing it through podcasting. So you mentioned that, there's a lot of advice out there for podcasters. What would you say is good advice and what would you say is nonsense? Because I also have a problem with all the get rich quick schemes and the do it this way. I have the pattern and you follow my method and you're going to like have 1 million downloads and blah, 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 blah. That stuff drives me insane. So what would you tell someone is good advice and what would you say is bad advice? And guys, if you guys have anything to say or add to this conversation, please, jump in or however you do that. I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just, let me know because we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
You have something?
It looks like Wendy wants to say something. Um, so to answer your question in the meantime, while you get Wendy up on stage or something, I just wrote like a few blog pieces today, like 5 good reasons to start a podcast. And I'll preview next week's blog post, which is 2 reasons not to start a podcast. Right. And the reasons that, to your point, that I see is bad advice, or let me not say bad, it's concerning advice. Podcast is not downloads are not repeatable and defensible. I'm using terms that I remember using when I was a paralegal. You can't do the same thing every time and get the same exact results. And when I see results in terms of downloads, I get concerns because I'm like, all my episodes, I do the same exact thing with this, promoting this episode every 2 weeks, and I don't get the same result. So how is someone else promising this? So I'll be wary of those. I've tried to get insight from podcast hosts. How can you guarantee certain downloads? How do you do that? Right. So I'd be mindful of that. Money is the biggest thing, and it's the hook that everyone is focused on. And because they are focused on this hook of downloads and money, everyone has blinders on and are not able to see red flags. So anything that involves increasing downloads or getting more money, I'd be very concerned about that. Podcasting, I've always said it, it's a long game, and money and success does not come overnight. If it appears that podcast A has been successful overnight, it's not what it seems. They've been toiling years, months back doing other things, and they are just blowing up for you, which is the same for anything. For us as Jamaicans, all of a sudden Usain Bolt became popular. I'm like, no, Usain didn't just become popular. He didn't do well in the 2004 Olympics. He's been running since that. It took him a whole other couple years just to get on the level where you all saw him in Beijing, and from then on. So I think we get caught up in someone else's 5-year success and think we can get their 5-year success in day 5, month 5, and that's not how it works. I think the other thing that I've seen is that people look at celebrities and influencers and say, so-and-so is doing that, they're killing it. And you're like, they could do it in that category. I'm like, nah, you ain't this person. They have a whole team. They have like a
Right.
whole millions of followers. How you figure you can kill it the way they're killing it? Like, I don't know. But again,
Right.
if you keep giving the message that you can make it, you could get the downloads, you could get the money, then people start to absorb that and really believe that this can happen. And that's just not how it works. I mean, if I'm doing something wrong, I want somebody to tell me, but it takes time to really see the level of success that people want to see in podcasting. And the other thing that I just want to point out, there are a lot of shows that people look at for success. A lot of podcast creators, they came from media companies and come over and do their own podcasting. So they have a level of expertise already that they're applying, to their podcast to help them be successful. So you have to understand that people are coming in. Yes, you may launch at the same time in the same month, but if someone was working at NPR for 4 years and they started their own podcasting, that's not a one-to-one. That's a very different starting point. Someone was at, another media house. It's not the same level as starting with someone
Yeah.
on a day one.
All right.
Is Wendy on?
Yeah, let Wendy. So Wendy, go ahead. Thank you so much for coming up. And hey, Dave and Jill, thank you for joining.
Hi,
Hey,
everyone.
okay. So I've been podcasting since I think 2010. I'm not sure. I want to tell you, ladies, and I have a show in 7 minutes, by the way, and it is the future of influence, and it is a creator kind of. So come to my show in a few minutes when you guys wrap it up, all right? Because everybody gets to like pitch in. Anyway, you must do podcasting in my book, because with full intention of you are doing it like your headline says. You have to have passion. You have to be doing it not to make money. You can't be doing it. I mean, you could have a sponsor that basically, I used to be on the talk radio, but yet that cost me $100 to go into the studio. But that's what launched my career in audio, basically. But I had a sponsor that paid the $100, right? I mean, so it was really my passion, my time, my effort, but he paid the $100 and he was my sponsor. That's how I started small. I still, to this day, you guys, I have had so many podcasts, different subjects. Case in point, in 6 minutes, this is a new one I'm trying on Fireside. I've done so many different things on Fireside. It's ridiculous. Okay. So it's just iterate, believe in yourself, have it full of passion, do it with the right intention. Don't do podcasting with the intention that you think you're going to make money. And, also, yes, it is about categories. So topics. So if you want to speak about one topic and that's your topic, I have 2 different podcasts. One is Conversations with Remarkable People Over 50. That is story views and totally produced. And I put sound and music in these interviews. And then I also have one that I do is 5 minutes that is like, hey, I'm just having fun and, saying what I want to say about something. 2 very different shows, not on Fireside. They are distributed everywhere, right? And I think Fireside is awesome. I have 5 minutes, but you guys, you can develop a fireside only place, right? This is what's awesome about Fireside, because you'll see it's an amazing community of creators and people who have been vetted. And it's an awesome place to do what you talk about, share your story, right?
Mhm.
So know where to build your audience, your community, because you're out there against all those millions of people that are going to podcast movement. They're in the podcast movement Facebook group and everybody's doing a podcast. And just because you can does not mean you should. So there you go. I'm going to jump. I got to go. I got to go get ready for my show. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Thanks,
much,
Wendy.
Wendy.
All right. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye. So she said a lot that that gives me a good segue. So Fireside is a new platform, kind of like Clubhouse, but I think Fireside is better. I'm not judging, I'm just saying. What do you think that these people who create these platforms for creators can do for creators like you and me and others who are dedicated and passionate about, sharing our stories and whatever it is that we're podcasting about, but we get buried by all the noise and the celebs and the, like when I come on Fireside, and I'm not hating on Fireside, don't, I hope they don't shut me down, but I'm just saying, like when I come on here, I see like a lot of, celebs, like pictures of them and stuff like that. And maybe sometimes I can't even differentiate between like who's a celeb and who's not. But I don't feel like I see a lot of everyday people who are just like, me and you just trying to get a message out there. So what do you think from your perspective that a platform like Fireside could do to help everyday creators really be seen and heard?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, let me just zoom out and say that
And if anyone else has any, any ideas or anything that you would like to say with regard to that, please do come up.
Yeah, I think my approach after 7 + 8 years at this point is that all of these platforms are software companies. And the approach for software companies is that you need early adopters and you need social proof. And social proof is going to come in the form of celebrities. And that's why they're the first on the platforms and they're marketed and promoted because we're in a keeping up with the Joneses culture. Like it's who's on this platform first. Everyone wants to be the first to do this. And so that is their approach. And that's a marketing and a strategic business approach. And I don't think we're ever going to get away from that because their number one goal is to make money. And how are they going to make money? Attract people onto this platform. How can they support us? It's going to come back to their dollars and cents. I can tell you all the ways that they could support us, but if they're not making money or, the lure of advertisers, they're having on a larger scale what smaller podcasters are having, which is if I go to company A and say, sponsor Kerry-Ann Friends podcast, the first thing they'll be like, how many downloads you have, how many this you have, what's that? On their level, it's the same thing. If they want to get a big sponsor to come on their platform or, they want more money, they want to know how many users, how many of those users are celebrities. What we need is exposure. And again, that's also with a grain of salt, right? You have to vet quality content. So if you are like, you know what, Kerry-Ann Friends is a good podcast with quality content. How do we get you more exposure so you can get in front of a wider audience? That is my number one need. Money will come, but at least every month someone discovers Kerry-Ann Friends and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know this exists. And you've been around for 7 years. Oh my gosh. It's like, it just out of nowhere. For whatever reason, they did a weird combination of a Google search and they found it. Most independent podcasters, they need exposure to reach people who don't know they exist. It's very hard to stand out in a place where there's millions of people already talking, and the same larger platforms get the same publicity over and over. And so it's a more intentional effort to highlight um, truly independent podcasters, because we have to also, I was talking to a friend last night, and we have to come back to redefine terms, right? Who is an independent podcaster? If you are a small company making a certain amount of revenue, you can't be considered an independent podcaster. An independent podcaster, we have to come up with new terms for them. And how do we support this group of independent podcaster if you vetted their content? How do we make a more intentional effort to reach really micro, whatever term we want to use? I think that's the best help. Um, um, Fireside and Clubhouse, they're all great platforms and tools. But as I said to you, I don't know that's where my audience is. The majority of them, I will get maybe some new people, but the stats still say the majority of Americans are still not consistently listening to podcasts. They barely could figure out or listen to podcasts, much less discover Fireside, Clubhouse, and all these other things if they want to bother with it. And that has always been where I'm like, do people want to even bother? So for instance, I'll tell you something really simple. I had an episode, the famous Ingrid episode, right? And we shared it. And somebody says, my mom wants to know if it's on a website. I forwarded the link to Apple Podcasts, but someone wants to listen to it on a website. And it goes to show that we have more work to do to educate people and let people get more comfortable with the technology that exists naturally on their phones and how to search for podcasts. So I think there's just more to educate and grow the audience, and then exposure for podcasters like you and I. We just need the exposure, because you don't know if New York Times or NBC or anybody feature me. You don't know, everybody's going to be like, oh my God, Jamaican. Nobody knows. It's, so we might see each other in this bubble, but the vast majority of people may not know we exist.
Yeah. So for all the people that just came in a little bit late, Kerry-Ann has a podcast called Carry-On Friends. And it's a podcast that kind of merges the Caribbean American experience. And she has people on that are doing amazing things in the Caribbean, or they're doing amazing things here and they're from the Caribbean or have Caribbean roots, or, it's a variety of really good content. I did a show with her recently about getting my citizenship in Jamaica, because my parents were born in Jamaica. I was born here. And for a long time, I didn't even know that you could get citizenship in the country that your parents are born in. So that was something that I did for myself and my daughter as well. So she has really great topics and just, an array of stuff. So my last question is, with all that we've talked about here, what keeps you going as a creator? Because I know you have the Caribbean Podcast Directory, which is a directory of, where you can find content created by people who have Caribbean roots or are, right from the Caribbean. You have your podcast. And like you said, you don't do it every week. But what keeps you engaged? Like what are you hoping for? What are you wanting to see happen?
So what keeps me going? And I'm going to say this, I'm not short on ideas. I have so many ideas. I have so many things I want to do, and podcast creates those opportunities. And that's what keeps me going. I could do this, I could do that. There are just so many options and so many ideas that I have. But also I want to test the limits of what I'm able to do. And podcast has really been the starting point, and blogging and content creation. And I do have patience. I've matured enough from a point where you're like, okay, I want to do this before anyone else do it, versus I've had this idea since 19, how long, and no one still didn't do it the way that I want to do it. And so I've matured enough to say it's not about who first, but who does it my way, and no one else could do it my way because there's only one me. And I think that's what really keeps me going. Like, I really want to be able to really fully live out the purpose that I've been put on this earth for. And creativity comes from God, and I have a lot of it, and I just want to just do it. So that's what keeps me going. The other thing that keeps me going is working with my friends who are so creative and also want to put their ideas out. That gives me a lot of joy. And I just think there are just so many possibilities that are yet to be uncovered. I didn't start Breadfruit Media because it was a vision. It was an idea that someone said, "Oh, I'm not starting this podcast unless you edit it." I was like, "Me?" I didn't see this as a career or a future. And I think that's the great thing about podcasting, where I get to peel away layers that I didn't see as a future when I started seriously exploring this as something to do in 2014. So that's what keeps me going. It's the starting point. You also have to understand that we've watched TV so many times. We've watched media so many times to say that's not really how Jamaicans talk. That's not really what happens in the Caribbean. I get an opportunity to change that narrative with the stories I create on my podcast.
Yeah,
I don't have the funds
of those terrible Jamaican accents. I can't take it. I heard they're making a Bob Marley biopic, and I'm like, they better not come with the wrong
accents, right? So it's stuff like that, right? It's like, I don't have the budget to do a Netflix show or something, but I'm going to create something that when other people from the Caribbean hear it, they're like, this is the real deal. And they're going to tell other people, like, this is the real deal. This is what you listen to. If it doesn't get to Netflix, fine. But my people, and people who are friends of the Caribbean, right? So you're not born, you don't have anyone. Maybe you have a spouse, a partner, a friend, or you just love traveling there, friends of the Caribbean. You're going to be like, yeah, this is the real deal. We are creating content to help change narrative, to enhance a certain thing. And I think that's the role and that I get to play. And that's what I enjoy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of my fireside experience. Thank you to everyone who came in and hung out with us and just listened to us yap about being passionate about podcasting. To all my fellow podcasters, keep up the good fight. Keep putting your content out there and doing your thing. And just remember that you have to be passionate about what you're doing. And if you're not passionate about it, switch it up and do something else that you're really passionate about. But the passion has to be there, because when the money's not, or when the downloads aren't, it's the passion that pushes you forward.
Yes, it truly is.
Thank you for Kerry-Ann. Kerry-Ann's website is Fortune Cookie. I don't know. I think that's what you call it. Check her out. She has some really great content. And like I said, she has a Caribbean podcast directory if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the Caribbean. And there are podcasts there from people all over. Like, I mean, different places. I was fascinated by that girl who spoke French. I can't even remember.
She's from Guadeloupe.
Yeah, that was fascinating as well. Like, it's really good content, guys. Yes. So check her out and have a wonderful night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.